want to know, after several years working for a great company such as Electronic Arts, uh, how you feel in your new project?
Well, it's not. I've been there before. It's been a long time. It's actually very refreshing. We started when I started Maxis many years ago. It was me and a few other guys, a handful of guys, and we were successful. We grew. Eventually, we got to about 450 people before we sold it to Electronic Arts, and then I was working within Electronic Arts for many years. Uh, and now I'm back in a startup situation. We have about 11 people in our company. We'll probably grow to about 20. I want to keep it small. Uh, and a lot of that is kind of the skill of development. That when I was working on things like The Sims and Spore, we were dealing with very large teams, a lot of infrastructure. Now I'm kind of back into more of a kind of app market, and it's almost like a time machine. It's kind of like going back in time 20 years. And the skill of development that we're at now is kind of what I was doing 15, 20 years ago. So it's kind of refreshing in that sense. I think that at the same time, the underlying platforms and technology have changed tremendously, and it's much more about social connections, cloud-based stuff, sensor data, personal metrics. So it's a whole different landscape, that we're kind of designing within, which is interesting as well. But I think I do prefer the much smaller structure. There's whenever you're in an organization that's grown like that. Most people will kind of tell you that, when you're 20 or 30 people, it feels kind of nice, everybody. Then when you go from about there to 50, there's kind of a major, very uncomfortable transition that goes on in terms of the way you have to organize 50 people instead of, let's say, 25. There's another big kind of dip or valley when you go from about 50 to 100. At that point, what I've noticed is that with a 20-person team, I generally spend about 3 hours working for every 1 hour I spend meeting with people. In a 100-person team, you generally spend about 3 hours meeting for every 1 hour you work. And that inefficiency, is very kind of frustrating, to everybody on the team. And I've never really seen a way around it. So I'd say that I really enjoy the smaller team size that I'm working in right now.
If you feel more pressure working with a small team, or you think it's better than work with less people and be the leader of that group?
Well, it also comes down to the quality of the people that you're working with. With a small team, 20 people ish. If you handpick every one of those hires, and these are people that you're very comfortable with, and they're all kind of superstars, you get tremendous efficiency, and it's very fulfilling. When you start getting into larger teams, a lot of times you start just filling positions. We need a network engineer. We need a community manager. And you'll just kind of grab whoever you can. You might steal them from another team. You might not always get the exact right person for that slot. And so, I'd say that, with a smaller team, you can kind of hold out for, kind of more skilled team members. And it ends up being very much about chemistry. There's kind of an art to building games, but there's also an art, which is maybe a more important one, around building a team or building an organization. And, you kind of realize that, whether your game is going to be great or so-so is really going to come almost down to your hiring decisions more than your design decisions. So it kind of puts your emphasis in a different area, I think, to kind of get the right team in place. But if you can get that, hand-picked team of 20 people, then get them all pulling in the same direction, it's very, very nice, kind of work situation.
You have talked a little bit now about, you were talking about the computation, cloud computing. You made some references to the mobile devices. Maybe it's a really broad question, but what do you think are the challenges maybe to bring simulation to this ubiquitous computing, no? To these tablets, to these mobiles, that our time spent on interacting with the device, I think it's much more different than with consoles or computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of the way gaming used to go is that you would spend quite a bit of time acquiring a game, then you'd sit in front of your computer and play it for 2 or 3 hours at a time. It was kind of session based, almost like you'd sit and watch a movie, and you'd put aside a certain block of time. Now, we're spending most of our time maybe dealing with tiny screens that we pull out of our pocket and we interact with a few minutes at a time. Uh, on the other hand, some of the best games I've ever played, whether they're on a PC, console, or whatever, are games that when I walk away from them, I'm still playing them in my head. I remember some of the early versions of Civilization. I'd start playing it for a while. Then I would save the game, and as I was going off and doing other things, in the back of my head, I'd still be playing that game, thinking about what I was going to do next when I got back to the computer that night. So I think that the kind of simulations I enjoy and the kind of things I try to design are things that the player can, in some sense, download into their imagination and continue to play and think about and strategize. And then when you get back, in front of the game, you've thought about it, and now you're going to kind of try a different direction. I think that actually works pretty well, when we get into more incremental interactions. By incremental, I mean, the idea that I'm playing it for a few minutes at a time by pulling the phone out of my pocket, and I'm touching it maybe many times a day for very short periods of time. I think, as a designer, that's the way I think about it. But at the same time, I also think in terms of the fact that, even for the real simulation, the computational simulation on the computer, it's not necessarily living on my phone or on my PC or on my console. It's living on the cloud somewhere. These are all just windows into it. So there's a world, somewhere that we might be simulating for whatever reason. And each one of these devices has, a very particular type of kind of window into what that world is. And I think that, in some sense, it's driving us toward platform agnostic games, or basically games that can be played on any platform. Every platform, of course, will have its strengths and weaknesses. I still think the computer mouse is one of the best input devices ever. I'm okay with the touch screens and all that stuff, but the mouse allows a certain level of precision that I've never felt with any other device. So there's certain interactions that are very comfortable there. But on the other hand, I think that, as I said before, I think a lot of our interesting simulations and games are going to be things that are, connecting to the real world. And so the value of basically having this in my pocket with me wherever I am and being able to acquire data about where I am and what I'm doing, that's a tremendous, tremendous design opportunity that I think that, we're just starting to figure out how to integrate that into things like simulations. So, I think that it is going to change, the nature of the way we approach things like simulations and games. I think that, we have to think in terms of this being, just an external window into another world, and maybe, with the small window I pull out of my pocket, that's something I can check in on that world very frequently during the day. Maybe I get home at night and I, go to my larger screen PC and I have much deeper interactions. But I think that, as a designer, you now have to think in terms of a multifaceted experience, not just one platform.
What would be your advice for the young startups with a lot of passion, a lot of creativity, but at very low resources, with many options to go to a console or PC or mobile or tablet or TV or free-to-play or pay premium, whatever? What would be your general advice for all these people starting and wanting to share their passion in their games with the world right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting world today. People used to ask me that question, 10 years ago, how do I get into the games industry? I want to start out. And, it was fairly predictable back then in terms of, well, try to get a job at a game company, work your way up, that kind of thing. But today there are just so many more opportunities, for somebody to kind of break into game development and design. The scale of development is much lower. You can get together with a few friends and build an app and release it. You can do an indie game, release it on the PC. But of course, because of the fact that the barriers to entry are so low, that means that there are many more people doing that. And you're out in this giant Darwinian competition. And now it's about signal to noise. I'd say it's, kind of much easier to kind of create an interesting game now, but it's much harder to get, visibility and to basically market it. Because there are so many things out there that people can download for free, done by small teams like that. But like anything, I think to get better, you just do it more often. And so the more you can kind of sit down and actually do something, whether it's a simple Flash game that you're kind of putting up on the web or an app that you're releasing on a smartphone, I think that a lot of people are kind of going through the iteration cycle of releasing a crappy game and then a pretty good game. And, they learn from that. That's the way everybody learns. That's the way I learned. My first game was pretty crappy, but I just got better because I plugged away at it. But I think that really, if you're kind of smart and you kind of, in some sense, need to be a jack of all trades. Because when you're dealing with 2 or 3 people releasing an app, you have to understand UI design, game design, technology, as well as marketing, PR, all these different things. I think that with things like Kickstarter, people have the opportunity to even go out and kind of get funding, which with much less friction than it used to be. So I think that, and there's some very good examples of indie game designers or app game designers that started with very small teams and ended up with huge hit projects. But of course, for every big success like that, there are 100 failures. So it is more of a meritocracy, in that sense. If you have a great idea and you can put together a very skilled team and get something on the market and get word of mouth and viral kind of PR, you have a good shot at actually kind of making it a viable business. But I would say that right now I think that in the app market and the indie games market are tremendous opportunities for somebody to kind of break into the industry. But it does require that you are coming out with something that is remarkably better than the other 10,000 people that are out there doing it. So it's entertainment is not easy. Interactive entertainment is one of the harder entertainment fields in that sense. But if you have a skilled team, you have a great idea, I think that your chances for making it a success are greater now than they ever have been.
Thank you very much for sharing this time with us. And congratulations again from all the Spanish professionals for this award. And we are really hoping to see you around next year sharing your knowledge with all of us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.